Okay, so this is kind of a weird time to talk about a race that happened literally last week, but there's a good reason for that. Um, I honestly was just not feeling it, especially after the way that the Cup race at Nashville ended. I just wanted to get away from all things NASCAR. And what eventually, at first, it was supposed to be like a 24-hour break, but it eventually turned into a 1 week break, especially since I had 4th of July and that was my day off from work. So I was just a little bit too preoccupied with other side projects in my life that I decided to just give NASCAR like a week break, literally. Then I sat down and watched the Xfinity race at Chicago and said, okay, enough, just enough sitting around. I'm just gonna get this review done, and I'm also gonna try and see if I can have the Chicago Street Course review posted, streamed later today, because I have a few thoughts about that race as well. But let's start with talking about what happened at last week's Cup race at Nashville, because I never got to give my thoughts on that. So just as you would expect, it was blistering hot. The track was slick, just like the Xfinity race yesterday. The high temperatures will be a factor not just on the track but on the drivers as well, especially with this being a 400-mile race. Qualifying was really messed up though. Whatever NASCAR was trying to do to make qualifying more fair, it was just not working out. Like at this point, just go back to how it used to be with single round qualifying, fastest overall lap gets the pole, because there is no way in hell you got guys like Christopher Bell starting behind Josh Berry, even though Bell put a faster lap than Berry. But because he wasn't the fastest guy in his group, he has to start like on row 2. What's the point of qualifying if it's gonna be segregated by groups? Like at this point, your best chance at a good starting position is hoping that you land on the quote unquote weaker group. Like, you guys see where I'm getting at? By trying to make qualifying fair, NASCAR has made it more unfair. Like, don't fix anything. Like, don't make something that's not broken. That's the point. Um, the point is, you're never gonna make qualifying fair, because at some point a driver is gonna get like a cloud cover, and it's gonna affect their qualifying lap. It might be faster or slower. It happens, okay. But as drivers, what you have to do is just adapt to the ever-changing conditions, okay. That's all. So, anyways, Hamlin wins the pole. At least they got the pole sitter right, even with this whack-ass format. Josh Berry qualified second, like I said, and Christopher Bell third. Again, like I said, they should be flipped around. Bell should have started second and Josh Berry third. Then again, Larson fourth, Keselowski fifth, Reddick sixth, William Byron seventh, Ty Gibbs qualified eighth, and he was the fastest in practice, by the way. Then Chris Buescher started ninth, and Austin Cindric in 10th, with Chase Elliott 13th, Carson Hocevar 15th, going a little further back through the field, Truex 17th, Ryan Blaney qualified 18th. He was the second fastest in practice and arguably had the best long run speed, so he was definitely a guy to keep watch of, or keep track of throughout the entire race. Then Ross Chastain qualified 20th, last year's winner. Bubba Wallace qualified 24th. He was third fastest in practice. Then Joe Logano 26th, Kyle Busch 27th, AJ Allmendinger 28th. Corey Heim, running the third 2311 car, number 50, qualified 29th. Then Riley Herbst qualified 30th, running the 15 for Rick Ware Racing. Then Daniel Suarez in 31st, Todd Gilliland in 32nd, who was the 5th fastest in practice. Eric Jones 34th, and John Hunter Nemechek 35th. This is becoming an alarming trend for Legacy Motor Club at this point. Both of their cars qualifying outside the top 30. Then Daniel Hemrick 37th, and finally Chad Fincham, running the MBM 66 car, qualifies 38th, way off the pace. I gotta add right there. But yeah, only one car went to the rear for unapproved adjustments. That car was Justin Haley, who qualified 33rd. The 51 will also make a pass-through penalty because that adjustment they did, which was unapproved, it came after post-qualifying inspection, after they had done qualifying. So because of that, he will make a pass-through penalty at the start of the race, which he does the moment the race starts. Stage 1 begins with Hamlin leading the first couple of laps, at least until lap 16th, when Justin Haley, who started at the rear and had to serve the pass-through penalty at the start of the race, he got loose while trying to stay on the lead lap, and this it held the 11 up, and it allowed Christopher Bell to take the lead. We had an early round of green flag pit stops. The cycle began on lap 38, with Alex Bowman, Austin Dillon, and Kyle Busch starting the cycle, followed by other drivers like Corey Heim, Chastain, Cindric, Herbst, and Keselowski. This eventually brings the leader Christopher Bell down pit road along with most of the field. Hamlin, Larson, Josh Berry, Chris Buescher, Chase Elliott, Bubba, Blaney, Allmendinger. This gave the lead to Ty Gibbs, who immediately pits like a lap or two later after Christopher Bell pitted, along with Hocevar, Harrison Burton, Priest, Suarez, Gragson, and Briscoe. The lead then shifted over to Reddick, with William Byron in second, who stayed out a couple of more laps before pitting, along with Martin Truex and Corey LaJoie. So Reddick pitting gave the lead over to Michael McDowell, with him, Logano, Stenhouse, and Hemrick yet to pit. Logano is the first to pit on lap 64, followed by Stenhouse on lap 73, and finally Michael McDowell on lap 77. Daniel Hemrick, he was passed by the guys on fresher tires before he got to pit. So this cycles the lead back to Christopher Bell, with Hamlin close behind him in second and Larson in third, for a race to end the stage. And despite Hamlin not letting the 20 pull away, like he was right there with Christopher Bell, he's unable to close the deal, in large part due to the lap traffic, not wanting to lose a lap, and also some guys on newer tires like Justin Haley catching up to the leaders to unlap themselves. So in the end, Christopher Bell ends up winning stage 1, with Denny Hamlin second. Tyler Reddick manages to get by Larson for third place on the last lap of the stage, leaving Larson in fourth. Then Brad Keselowski fifth. Ty Gibbs, William Byron, Chris Buescher, Truex, and Bubba Wallace round out the top 10. So we go to pit road. The leaders pit, with Hamlin this time winning the race off pit road over Bell, Larson, and Reddick. Then Logano, he takes 2 tires and gains 13 spots, so he moves up to 8th. And several guys stay out to take the wave around, among them Justin Haley, Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, Stenhouse, Ryan Preece, John Hunter, and Chase Briscoe. So with that, we move on into stage 2. Hamlin is back in the lead, and this time is for the long haul. Like, there's no Justin Haley to screw him over this time. And behind him, his Toyota teammates go second, third, and fourth, with Christopher Bell in second, Tyler Reddick in third, and Ty Gibbs in fourth. So it's a Toyota 1, 2, 3, 4 to begin the stage, at least until another caution comes out for another Toyota, this time John Hunter Nemechek getting loose and spinning up of turn 4. We go to pit road. The leaders pit. Christopher Bell, Keselowski, Buescher, Logano, Chastain, Gragson, Bowman, and Hocevar, they take 2 tires, and everyone else takes 4. Because of this, Christopher Bell wins the race of pit road over Keselowski and Buescher. And Ross Chastain unfortunately gets penalized for an uncontrolled tire, so that 2-tire stop becomes a 4-tire stop in the end. And the restart is pretty crazy. Logano and Hamlin, they stack up the field, leading to Larson getting into the 11, who gets into the 22. Both the 11 and the 22 slide up the track, losing a couple of spots. And then a few laps after that, Ty Gibbs spins up of turn 4 after some contact with Alex Bowman to bring out the next caution of the race. And it's at this point where rain becomes a concern. Yeah, that's right, rain. There was a 90% chance for today's race to rain, but looking at the radar, it was just like a slight rain shower, so I really doubt the race will be called, but you never know, especially considering that there are no wet weather tires. But hey, at least Nashville has slides, unlike New Hampshire, so overall, I wasn't really worried about that. The green flag waves for the next restart, and the aggression and intensity picks up. Reddick and Larson, they get by Keselowski for second and third, but they just run out of time as the caution soon comes out for lightning in the area, which means that the race is red flagged for at least 30 minutes, and who knows how long, because a couple of minutes after the race was red flagged, it just started pouring. Personally, I wasn't that worried because, one, it was just a small rain shower, so I was confident that the race will be resumed relatively quickly and go the distance. And two, this little rain shower will help cool off the drivers after the race started at 3:30 p.m. And two, this little rain shower would have helped cool off the drivers after, they started under that 3:30 p.m. summertime blistering heat. So I wasn't really that worried. If anything, I was just happy for once that Mother Nature actually brought rain onto the track, because the track was. If you guys saw my thoughts on the Xfinity race the previous day, it was blistering hot. I even made a case at Nashville. This race should have been run at night like they did last year. So yeah, I was really happy that that rain shower came to help the drivers cool themselves off. And that's exactly what happened. As the race resumed an hour and a half later, like I said, it was a pretty light rain shower. The race resumed with Bell still as the leader, Reddick second, and Larson third. And Austin Cindric, he got penalized after the red flag was lifted because his team was working on the car during the red flag. And by working on the car, I mean the crew had a fan on their pit wall pointed at the car that NASCAR believed was cooling the car, thus providing an advantage, whatever that means. Thus, he was sent to the rear of the field. So, we go to pit road. The leaders stay out. Only Alex Bowman, Logano, Austin Dillon, Haley, Chastain, LaJoie, Burton, Stenhouse, Kyle Busch, Hemrick, and John Hunter Nemechek pitted. And then we go to the restart. So the race resumes on lap, I believe, 140, I want to say. The rain shower came out a couple of laps before halfway, like 15 laps before halfway. Could have been less. Could have been less laps. Around 135, 140, that's when the race was red flag. But it's important to mention that rain washed off all of the rubber, leaving the track in a similar state to how it looked before the race started. Thankfully, the stage went green the rest of the way, and this green flag run was long enough to the point that there was enough rubber being put back on the surface. Also, part of that was some of the battles that we saw throughout the field. We saw Bubba Wallace versus Ryan Preece, Ty Gibbs versus Noah Gragson. I believe that was a battle for 10th, battle for the final stage point of the stage. We also had Chris Buescher versus William Byron, where Buescher got loose and Byron was right there, like right behind him, or I don't know, I can't recall exactly, but I know one of the two guys got loose, and then the other guy was right behind them, and it led to them losing a couple of spots. I believe they dropped out of the top 10 as well because they were in the running for stage points, and this happened on the restart too. So it was a pretty eventful restart. Also, Kyle Busch versus Riley Herbst, with Kyle Busch struggling to pass a Rick Ware Racing car. Just painful. But anyways, up front, this was all happening behind Christopher Bell. He sweeps the stages, so this is now his 9th stage win, which makes him the driver with the most stage wins this season, over Kyle Larson, who has now 8. So Bell wins stage 2, Tyler Reddick finishes 2nd, Larson 3rd, and Hamlin 4th. These two were not happy with each other. I believe Hamlin, he took exception to the way that Larson raced him at the end of the stage. You also got to remember the runnings at Iowa and New Hampshire, as well as earlier in the race, when Larson bumped Hamlin out on the restart and Hamlin got into Logano. Yeah, that was also a little bit of the running, adding on a bit to the rivalry there as well. So these two were already a little bit hot, and Hamlin was pretty heated on the radio. Pretty heated on the radio too over what happened. So, emotions are running high, surely. Tempers were as high as the temperature was at Nashville. Keselowski finished 5th in that stage, Chase Elliott 6th, Truex, Blaney, Buescher, and Ty Gibbs round out the top 10 for stage points, with Ty Gibbs just barely getting that final stage point over Gragson. A great rebound for him too after getting spun out by Alex Bowman earlier in the stage. So we go to pit road. The leaders pit once again. This time, Christopher Bell wins the race of pit road over Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. Larson also has a very slow stop. His jack dropped while changing the right side tires. He loses a ton of time, and he drops down to 12 after coming in 3rd on pit road. Chris Buescher also with a slow stop. He also falls out of the top 10, dropping down to 17th. And just like that, We are in stage 3 now. Bell continues to lead while Reddick takes second back from Hamlin. Um, Meanwhile, Michael McDowell, he has a transmission issue. He can't get into 5th gear, drops a ton of spots. It's like slow on the track. No caution comes out, but I believe he eventually had to take it to the garage and done for the day because of that transmission issue. Okay, now that I'm looking at my phone on the NASCAR app, he actually did DNF'd. So yeah. Once again, another promising race ends with a terrible finishing result for McDowell. So we have a caution during this green flag run. Riley Herbst hits the wall after some contact with Corey LaJoie, and the 15 ends up dropping out of the race due to that tolling damage. And this leads into strategy on pit road. The leaders stay out, but the guys towards the back of the field, they pit, starting with Chris Buescher and followed by Allmendinger, Ryan Preece, Suarez, Justin Haley, Austin Dillon, Zane Smith, McDowell, LaJoie, Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, Stenhouse, Daniel Hemrick, and I believe Bubba Wallace as well. Yeah, as a matter of fact, McDowell and Bubba Wallace, they came down a second time to top off on fuel. And then we go to the restart, which doesn't really last long, as immediately as a green flag flies, we have another caution for Eric Jones hitting the wall, so we're lining up again for another restart. Important to note here, Hamlin made an aggressive move on this restart. He made contact with Christopher Bell in the process, and he almost made it 3 wide. So this takes us to another restart, and this time Reddick, who was running second on this restart, he was lined up second right beside Bell. He stays even with the 20, stays side by side with him through the entire run. Just an awesome battle for the lead overall, at least until another caution comes out for Chase Elliott just getting loose and spinning off of turn 4 while running 6. And this caution brings the leaders within their fuel window, so the leaders pit. And this is where the strategy really comes into play, because Blaney, Allmendinger, LaJoie, Bubba, McDowell, and John Hunter, they stay out. Kyle Busch, Daniel Hemrick, Justin Haley, Stenhouse, and Austin Dillon, they take fuel only. And then Ross Chastain, Logano, Berry, Suarez, Cindric, Bowman, Preece, and Zane Smith, they take 2 tires. And everyone else takes 4. And on the restart, as you would expect, things get wild. Just a couple of laps in the run, Christopher Bell gets loose in turn 1, spins, and crashes out of the race. Like, this literally changes everything. This race is wide open now because Bell was the guy to beat all this time. He was also on a hot streak as well, so this race is definitely going to stop that 20 teams hot streak of, running well at Iowa and winning at New Hampshire. It's definitely gonna put a damper on that now. But anyways, this leads us into another restart, and this next restart is even crazier, with the field going 3 to 4 wide on mid-pack, with lots of beating and banging all throughout. And this is what leads to another caution, with Brad Keselowski with a huge run on Austin Dillon down the front stretch. He comes down on him entering turn 1, thinking that he was clear. Turns out he was not clear, and he ends up crashing out hard in the back end. Pretty similar to the Christopher Bell caution, except that the only difference is that Keselowski is actually able to beat the DVP clock and actually end up finishing the race running without a DNF. And then under caution, Carson Hocevar, he just right hooks Harrison Burton as they were slowing down. And then Hocevar tries to cover it up by saying, why is he slowing down? Like, bro, didn't you see the caution lights turned on? Maybe you didn't mean to do it, okay. Or maybe there's something that happened between you and the 21. I guess we'll never know unless someone speaks up, but still. Even if Hocevar didn't do it on purpose, which I don't think he did, because, there's little reason for him to be mad at Harrison Burton. It definitely looked like Harrison Burton was just trying to, slow down, but he slowed down a little too much. But still, that is a huge lack of awareness that I would be surprised that if NASCAR doesn't at least give him a warning, because wrecking someone under caution, on purpose or not, especially right hooking them under yellow on an oval, That's a big no-no. So, and I definitely expected a fine, or at the very least a fine or even a points penalty for Hocevar. Um, but yeah, we'll get into Hocevar later. Into that Hocevar later when I talked about him and where he finished. But on the restart, Chastain takes the lead over Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace for third. Bubba Wallace running third. That caution that Blaney was looking for to help him like save some more fuel, unfortunately did not come out. He had to pit with third to go. Just another terrible strategy call by his crew chief Jonathan Hassler. It's almost a miracle that this guy actually ended up winning at Iowa, because he threw away the win at Gateway and then the win at Nashville as well. He could have, in some alternate timeline, Ryan Blaney could very well have 3 wins right now. Also, Bubba Wallace, he's pretty low on fuel, but it's not as much of a concern as Blaney. He still has like to save some fuel, or to at the very least salvage a top 10 and stay alive in the playoff bubble battle. So as the laps wind down, with Bubba and Ryan Blaney short on fuel, it looks to be a race. It looked to be a race for the win between Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain. And to Chastain's credit, he just did a masterful job trying to defend. But in the end, there's only so much you can do against a faster car. Like, you're not gonna hold him off for 20 laps. That's just not gonna happen. A simple slip up, and the 11 is gonna pounce. And that's exactly what happened. Chastain drifted off the track a little bit with like 6 laps to go, and he was on, and Hamlin made the pass, allowing Hamlin to pass for the lead. And again, to Chastain's credit, it looked like Hamlin was gonna pull away, but Chastain stayed like within half a second of the 11. It looked like, and we were on our way to see like a great ending. Because with all this talk about Larson and Hamlin being the rivalry, a lot of people forgot that Chastain and Hamlin, they had their own rivalry going on not too long ago. But yeah, it looked like this race will end in a 2-man battle for the win between Hamlin and Chastain, when all of a sudden a caution comes out with 2 to go. Cindric spins on the backstretch, and this forces overtime, and literally everything changed in overtime. We go to pit road first of all. The leaders were pretty low on fuel because they last pitted on lap 220, but they decided to stay out, not wanting to give up track position just yet, and feeling that they had pretty much enough fuel for at least one overtime. Only a couple of guys towards the back pitted. Stenhouse, Bubba Wallace, Buescher, Haley, Austin Dillon, Suarez, and Corey Heim. All of those guys took 2 tires and fuel. And then Tyler Berry, Priest, and Gilliland, they took 4 tires. So, we go to overtime. And in overtime, Larson immediately makes his move. He aggressively shoves Hamlin into turn 1, hoping to kind of push him out of the way. And if you ask me, that pushing and shoving was a little too personal. It was pretty clear at this point that Larson was fed up with Hamlin over the way he got raced him in the past couple of weeks prior to this race. And since it was like the closing laps of the race and they were like racing for the win, Larson felt like, I'm gonna shove you out of the way then. Unfortunately, Larson's aggression came back to bite him as he clipped the apron in turn 1, shot up the track into Chastain, spinning the one out and causing a massive wreck, collecting Ty Gibbs, John Hunter Nemechek, Austin Dillon, Daniel Hemrick, William Byron, and also Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch is pretty interesting because he had to slow down as well since the wreck happened directly in front of him. He came out of it without any damage, thankfully, but NASCAR determined that since he wasn't involved in the wreck, he will get to keep his position. He was 4th before the wreck happened, so NASCAR decided to line him up 4th once again, as there was no way he could have maintained reasonable speed without getting some damage in the process. It was a controversial decision, sure, especially since it looked like Kyle Busch had clipped the wall a little bit, which would have counted as a wreck damage as getting involved in the wreck. But I mean, it's not the first time NASCAR has done this. I remember they did this with Kevin Harvick at Darlington last year, when ironically Larson and Chastain got together on a late race restart. This was the spring race at Darlington, FYI. And of course, I'm not complaining because Kyle Busch has had enough shit go sideways for him this past couple of weeks. It was about time something good happened to him. So we go to double overtime. Again, the leaders stay out, even though fuel is starting to become a serious concern now for them. if you remember, they had enough fuel for one overtime, but two overtimes was like pushing it. And unfortunately for them, it doesn't end here either, because as soon as the green flag drops, Daniel Suarez, he gets spun through the grass. Again, no caution comes out. And another multi-car crash on the backstretch involving several drivers towards the back. That is what brings back out the caution. Corey Haim, Justin Haley, Josh Berry, Todd Gilliland, Harrison Burton, Stenhouse, Ryan Blaney, Daniel Hemrick again. So 9 drivers in total involved in this multi-car pileup. And at this point, it's become pretty clear. The leaders are running on fumes. Like, there is no way they will make it through even 2 green flag laps without someone running out of fuel. And with the leaders staying out once again, this in turn will cause another caution and force another overtime. So in other words, this race is far from over. We go into triple overtime, and as soon as the green flag drops, my prediction turned out to be right. As soon as the green drop, Larson, who was running second, runs out of fuel, and he stacks the entire outside lane up. And of course, Kyle Busch, who was right behind Larson, gets the worst of it. You just cannot make this up. I knew someone was going to run out of gas, but Kyle Busch somehow getting taken out when he wasn't even the guy who ran out of gas in the first place. This season has been the literal definition of Murphy's Law for Kyle Busch. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong in the most unexpected of ways. Like, this entire month of June has been absolute hell. Probably the worst 5-race stretch of his career. Although, to be fair, June from 2022, like from Sonoma all the way up until Pocono, I believe. June, July 2022 is like right up there as well. But I mean, if you look at Kyle Busch throughout the entire month of June, Gateway, he was running in the top 10, and then he got into an incident with Larson. To be fair, he ran Larson down the track, so that was kind of his fault. Then Sonoma, he was running in the top 10 with a potential to make it to the top 5 before Chastain spun him out on the last lap, and then to add insult to injury, he ran out of fuel anyway, so he wouldn't have finished in the top 10 anyways. Then in Iowa, again, he was battling for a top 10 before a differential failure caused him to drop out of the race in stage 3. And then we go to New Hampshire, where, we just don't talk about that race. But let's not talk about New Hampshire. And now Nashville, where he was like running in the top 5. The best shot he's had to win a race since, I want to say, Dover, which was like another concrete track where he finished top 5 in, actually. But yeah, the best shot that he's had to win a race since Dover. And he gets taken out by something out of his control. Just absolutely brutal there. But anyways, back to the race. Like I said, it became pretty apparent at this point, with Larson running out of fuel, and Truex even reporting on the radio that his fuel pressure has dropped and his car was like sputtering. It became pretty apparent the leaders must pit. Like, they had no chance of winning this race anymore. So finally, on lap 322, 100 laps after they made their last pit stop, the leaders finally come down pit road. Okay, scratch that. Not all of the leaders pitted. Only Hamlin, Truex, and Larson did, putting Logano as the leader who had not pitted since lap 220. And my instant reaction when Logano decided to stay out, I was like, what the fuck, dude? You saw what happened with Larson on the previous restart. Didn't you hear how Truex was running on fumes before coming down pit road? Like, I know he's on the playoff bubble, but he's not in a must-win situation quite yet. As a matter of fact, Logano right now was in a tight points battle with Bubba Wallace for the final playoff spot. Was he really planning on risking it all for a long shot chance at a win? Well, I mean, this is Joe Logano we're talking about, and his crew chief Paul Wolfe, he has managed to snatch a couple of wins of his own by way of fuel saving back when he was like Brad Keselowski's crew chief. You had Kentucky 2016, and hell, even further back when Keselowski won the title in 2012, he won one of the races that he won, which was Dover in the fall. It came by way of fuel mileage. So Paul Wolfe, he knows a thing or two about fuel saving, but 100 laps on a single tank of fuel on an intermediate track, that was like pushing it. If they think they can make it, I'm not judging them, but I just think the odds were pretty stacked against them. So, Logano leads. He still refuses to pit. And we go into quadruple overtime, and as the green flag drops, more of the leaders start running out of gas, among those being Chase Elliott. Not Joey Logano though, who now has to hold off Chase Briscoe, Corey LaJoie, and Zane Smith for 2 laps to secure the win. And to his credit, his fuel tank holds up pretty well. But then another caution comes out for a Josh Berry spin on the backstretch, as if this race just could not get any more chaotic. We are going to a quintuple overtime now. For the first time ever in NASCAR history, we are going to a fifth overtime. And at this point, I was thinking, there was virtually no way Joey Logano was going to make it on fuel now. Like, it has been, at this point, it has been like more than 100 laps since he pitted. As well as Chase Briscoe. Briscoe, I believe the last time he pitted was on like lap 224, 225. And yet, they both stay out. Even the guys who pitted on lap 245, they were pitting again for fuel. Corey LaJoie, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott. As a matter of fact, Elliott ran out of fuel. But that 22 car is still running. On fumes, he's on the reserves, but still running. So, for better or for worse, we go into a fifth overtime. Logano gets a great launch over Briscoe, and with Briscoe running out of gas, remember, he pitted on lap 224, so he was 100 plus laps on the fuel tank as well, so it was to be expected. Logano is still running though, and all he had to do was hold off Zane Smith, as well as a surging Tyler Reddick, who went from 6th to 2nd on the restart, and he was all but ready to pounce once the 22 ran out of fuel. But surprisingly, the 22 just not run out of fuel. And despite a couple of incidents like Truex spinning in turn 2 after some contact with Daniel Suarez, and Chase Elliott spinning again off of turn 4 into the grass, the race stays green, and Joey Logano, who had not pitted since lap 220, stretched his fuel tank to 111 laps and wins at Nashville. And 111, that was literally the magic number, because as soon as he crossed the finish line, he ran out of fuel. He literally ran out of gas. Sure, he had just enough for a burnout, but after that, he just could not make it back to victory lane. Like, literally, the last drop of fuel that he had, he used it for that burnout. I gotta say, Logano, he shut me up. He proved me wrong. He just proved that with enough cautions, you can actually go 100 laps on a single fuel tank on an intermediate track. It's a long shot, but it's possible. His gamble actually paid off. And his reward is a playoff berth. He joins his Penske teammates on the playoff grid. And it's pretty crazy too, because if you remember a month and a half ago, Ford had not won a cup race. And everyone was wondering what was wrong with them. Well, ever since the middle of May, ever since that race at Darlington that Keselowski won, they have won 4 races. 5 if you count the All-Star race. They have been the winningest manufacturer ever since. And Penske has looked like the best team overall in the month of June, with each of the drivers scoring wins to lock themselves in the playoffs. Now, if they could only figure it out in the Xfinity and Truck Series, that would be great. But the bottom line is, Ford is back like they never left, at least on the Cup Series side of things. Also, I need to remind, because this needs to be said, even year Logano is still a thing. We had to wait until halfway through the season, but even year Logano is back. Even year Logano is back. He's back to win potentially still a 3rd championship away in another even number year. Oh my goodness. I told y'all, never count even year Logano out. Never count even year Logano out. But yeah, let's take a look over the finishing results here, because holy shit, these finishing results are all over the place. Zane Smith finished 2nd, and I'm gonna sound like a hater here, but I am so glad Zane Smith did not win. Like, I have nothing against the guy, but it's a similar reason as to why I didn't want Brennan Poole to win at Talladega earlier this year. It's because of playoff implications. Look where Zane Smith is in the point standings right now. He is among full-time Cup drivers. He is in last place. And remember that the top 30 in points rule to be playoff eligible, that rule is no more. In other words, if Saint Smith won, that would have shaken the playoff bubble like you would never believe, and he would have added a driver that would have no business being in the playoffs otherwise, like like Austin Cindric. Of course, I would have been happy. I would have been happy for him getting his first career win. I mean, why you wouldn't be happy? But considering winning means everything in today's NASCAR, I'm sorry. I just cannot celebrate that much when I realize the playoff implications that come behind that win. Again, hate the player, don't hate the player, hate the game. I hate this playoff format for taking away my ability to enjoy underdog wins to its fullest. I just cannot get too happy when it comes when I know these guys are gonna be easy playoff fodder anyways. Like Zane Smith, Austin Cindric, maybe Daniel Suarez to a certain extent. And those three guys, they're gonna be round of 16 playoff exits for the most part. They're gonna be like easy outs on the first round. Like they're gonna make the playoffs much less competitive. The first couple of rounds much less competitive. I hope you guys understand. I have nothing against Saint Smith. If he wins, like good for him. But I don't think a win should lock you into the playoffs. A win alone should not lock you into the playoffs, especially when you're like especially when you've been running worse than Harrison Burden all season long. When you're like lowering points like Harrison Burden. I hope you guys understand. Still though, great finish for Saint Smith though. Hopefully that turns his season around, and hopefully it gives him Trackhouse like some hope. It hopefully helps build a case for Trackhouse as to why they should give him the third Cup car. I know Shane Van Gisbergen's name is has actually gotten pretty hot. Has become a hot topic recently, especially with his success in road courses in Xfinity. But I don't know, with Saint Smith finishing second, I don't know, this could be the start of something, of some solid runs for him that could eventually lead to him getting the third Trackhouse Cup car over SVG. I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, Tyler Reddick finished third. I was really hoping, if Logano ran out of fuel, I was hoping Reddick won that race over Saint Smith. But in the end, it kind of looks like he stalled out in the end. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that Saint Smith beat him to the line for second. But hey, at least third place finish is still great. He's still the driver with the most top 10 finishes in the season, which is, a little bit of a fun fact right there. Ryan Preece finished 4th, Chris Buescher 5th, Ryan Blaney 6th, Bubba Wallace 7th, Kyle Larson 8th, Daniel Hemrick 9th, Noah Gragson 10th. I told you guys, these finishing results are like all over the place right now. Then AJ Allmendinger in 11th, Denny Hamlin 12th, Justin Haley 13th after starting in last place and having a pass-through penalty, following a lap down early on. He finishes 13th. Solid job. Carson Hocevar finishes 16th. Okay, who, by the way, because now that I'm getting to Hocevar, earlier this week it was confirmed that yes, Hocevar, he did get a 25-point penalty for wrecking Harrison Burton under caution. Again, like I said, whether it was on purpose or not, it doesn't matter. It was a very dangerous move, and I am pretty glad NASCAR dealt with that accordingly. Personally, a fine would have been enough, but considering that NASCAR, they kind of set a precedent with Austin Hill and Cole Custer, a 25-point penalty, it goes right in line with that precedent. Chase Elliott finished 18th. Despite running out of fuel on the 4th overtime and spinning out on the last lap, he still manages to, at the very least, keep the top 20 streak alive. Then William Byron finished 19th. Literally, Byron has been non-existent this past couple of races. Well, aside from Iowa where he finished second, but aside from that race, Byron has been very, very forgettable. Not gonna lie. And then Corey LaJoie, he rounds out the top 20. Chase Briscoe 21st. He ran out of fuel on the final restart. Then Daniel Suarez in 22nd. Ty Gibbs in 23rd, despite taking some massive damage from the Ross Chastain crash on the first overtime. I really thought he was gonna DNF, but to his credit, the team beat the DVP, and the 54 managed to make it back on the lead lap with no front end, literally. He finished 23rd. Martin Truex finishes 24th. Again, he got spun out on the last lap by Suarez, which is why he finished 24th. Brad Keselowski 25th. Josh Berry 26th. Kyle Busch 27th. Now he is, with Logano winning, Kyle Busch is now 104 points below the cut line. If the race ended under green, Kyle Busch would have finished like 4th. He would have gotten a top 5, and he would have been like 30 points below the cut line only. Now he's 104. His playoff hopes are on life support at this point. I don't see, with the way he's been running and with the terrible luck that he's had, I really doubt he makes it. He makes it to the playoffs. At this point, I just want him to win, just to extend the win streak to 20, and then after that, I don't care what happens anymore. I just want him to win at this point. At this point, I don't care about playoffs anymore. I just want him to win. Even if it's like backing into a win, I don't care. I just want him to win at this point. But yeah, Corey Heim 29th. This result just want to reflect how well he ran. I know because I watched the entire race from start to finish. Corey Heim ran top 20 for most of the day. And he was even fighting for a top 10 spot with Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson at one point. I believe it was like towards the end of stage 2. Right on the restart, right after the rain delay. Yeah, Corey Heim, he really showed some promise. Ricky Stenhouse in 30th, John Hunter Nemechek 31st, Austin Dillon 32nd, Ross Chastain 33rd, Eric Jones 34th. Those guys, I believe, got taken out in some overtime madness. Then Michael McDowell 35th. Yeah, sure enough, that mechanical failure, that transmission failure that he had like early in stage 3, yeah, he never recovered from that. He never recovered from that. He eventually had to DNF. Christopher Bell finishes 36 after sweeping the first 2 stages. He was the guy to beat, and all he has is a 36th place finish to show for it. Okay, that's actually crazy. Now that I'm looking at Christopher Bell's finishes, they're starting to be a lot like Kyle Larson from last year, like checkers or wreckers for Christopher Bell. A little bit, obviously. But yeah, Christopher Bell has been checkers or wreckers this season. Holy shit. And yeah, then in the end, Riley Hurst 37th and Chad Fincham 38th. Rounding out the bottom 2 spots. But final thoughts on this race. This race was shaping up to be a decently good race with a decently good finish between Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain. Until that Cindric caution that sent us into overtime, and from that point on, the race became batshit insane, lots of aggression, crashes, guys running out of fuel. It brought me flashbacks from the 2023 Truck Series Championship race, and not the good flashbacks. This was, in my opinion, one of those races that was shaping up to be good, but then the ending just kind of ruined it for how chaotic it was. So because of that, I at first, when this race ended, at first I was thinking, this race is an instant D plus at best. But then after rewatching the highlights and noting how how clean the race was, especially in the first half of the race before the rain was, because literally I'm being literal here. The race, the first half of the race and the second half of the race, like the first like 140 laps before the rain delay, and then the race, how the race went after the rain delay, it was literally night and day. Literally. The first half of the race was pretty decent, and Bell, he definitely established himself as the guy to beat, with other guys like Hamlin, Larson, and Reddick kind of like just being there. But then the second half of the race was just cautions after cautions after cautions. I believe in the second half of the race alone, we had about 10 or 11 cautions, because this race had like 15 cautions overall. I know for a fact 10 of those came in the second half of the race, at least 10 or 11 of those. So just for the first half of the race being pretty decent and the drivers keeping it pretty clean, stage 1 even went caution free, which, considering how the race ended, is pretty hard to believe now. I'm gonna bump this rating up a bit. I'm gonna give it a C-. I'm gonna give it a C- because this race was not chaotic from start to finish as the 2013 Truck Series Championship race was. this this race was chaotic only at the end. Like the start of the race, it was pretty clean. And you know how much I love my clean racing and long green flag runs, so I definitely took that into consideration. But that being said, I am going to reiterate my take on overtime restarts, because it seems like every time we have a race that ends in 4 or 5 overtimes, pretty much once a year, because not every race is going to end on that many overtime attempts, the same discussion, the same discourse resurfaces once again about how races should end under caution if the yellow comes out with less than 5 laps to go. You know, the way they used to do it back in the Winston Cup days. Personally, I disagree. I have no problem with NASCAR overtime as it is right now. I personally feel it's something that sets NASCAR apart from other series like IndyCar or Formula One that don't add laps past their scheduled distance for the sake of ending it under green. In other words, it's a good gimmick. It guarantees almost every time that a race will end under green. Unless, you know, the leader takes the white flag. In that case, the next flag ends the race. But with the overtime rules, it pretty much increases the chances of a race, guaranteeing that a race ends under green. Almost guaranteed. So I have no problem with that, obviously. As for the people who say that they should limit the overtimes to like 1 to 3 attempts like they used to do until 2015, you know, basically the green-white checker rule, there's a reason why that rule is not a thing anymore. That infamous Talladega race from 2015. Having limited overtime attempts, it just makes race manipulation a possibility. Yes, I know, NASCAR has set a precedent with large fines and harsh penalties to discourage teams from attempting anything of the sort, but come on, this is NASCAR, especially with this win and you're in format. Someone is eventually going to push the envelope and open that whole can of worms again, and people are going to complain, they're going to want unlimited overtimes back, and it's going to be a circle. We're going to be dancing in circles, basically. And besides, I don't know how many times I need to repeat myself, but not every race will end with 4, 5 overtimes. Not every race will end like this. Across all 3 national series, we only see a race or 2 every year end with quadruple overtime or beyond that. Yes, it's ugly, it's a stupid and a bad look for the sport when it happens, but you people have to understand, these races are an anomaly. They are not the norm. Like, off the top of my head, on the last 4 years that I have watched NASCAR, the last 4 seasons, Nashville this year, obviously, the championship race at Phoenix last year in the truck series, then the truck race at Knoxville in 2021, and also the race, the COTA race last year, the Cup race at COTA last year, the Tyler Reddick won in 2023. I believe that race also ended in 4 overtimes. So yeah, off the top of my head, I can only remember 4 races that ended in 4 overtimes or more in the last 4 years. This is, I'm talking about since the 2021 season started. This is an anomaly. And we're talking about across all 3 national series combined. Not every race is going to end with 4 to 5 overtimes. It's more often than not, every race will end either on a scheduled distance or on a single overtime, maybe double overtime. Double overtimes are like very uncommon, but triple, quadruple, 5 overtimes, quintuple overtimes, that's just pushing it. Those are anomalies. As a longtime fan of the sport, should NASCAR really change their rules to account for extreme case scenarios? And again, as the longtime fan of the sport that I am, I've been watching NASCAR since 2004, I can tell you with confidence, NASCAR has done this several times in the past with disastrous results. I do not want NASCAR to change their rules because an extreme case scenario happened, an extreme long shot scenario happened, NASCAR immediately decides to change the rules to prevent that from happening, and it just creates an even bigger problem. I do not want NASCAR to do that anymore. I keep the overtime rules as it is. If it means that we have to endure, a race or two a year ending in 4 overtimes or more, then so be it. Every race, every rule is not perfect. There's always going to be some negative associated with that rule. In this case, it's, the potential of a race never ending. Never ending until there are only 10 cars left in the race. But honestly, if that is the price that I have to pay just for NASCAR to have unlimited overtimes and not have a limited amount of overtimes, so be it then. So be it. Again, like I said, not every race is gonna end. It's gonna end with 4 overtimes and multiple wrecked race cars, and that's it. That's my bottom line. Keep unlimited overtimes as is. It drastically reduces the potential of race manipulation. It's a gimmick that sets NASCAR apart from other racing series. And most importantly, like I said, not every race will end with 4 overtimes and multiple wrecked race cars. So that's my take. That's my rant on why unlimited overtimes are not as bad of a thing as you think they are. I'll much rather have this than a repeat of Talladega 2015. Just saying. So, as for the driver of the day, honestly, I'm just drawing a blank here. Driver of the day, with the way this race ended, I don't know who to give driver of the day to. For a moment, I thought about giving it to Saint Smith, but I thought about giving it to Saint Smith, but that would imply that I was kind of rooting for him to win. It's still a great finish for him, but Zane Smith wasn't even in the picture until all of that overtime madness happened. You know what? Screw it. I'm giving driver of the day to Joey Logano. Stretching the fuel tank to 111 laps on an intermediate track is unheard of. Even with that many cautions, I don't know what voodoo magic Logano and his crew chief Paul Wolf they did on that last pit stop to pull that off. But it worked out in a big way for them, so honestly, shout out to them. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Cup race. At Nashville from last week. Chicago Street Course. I'm gonna try and see if I can get the. Xfinity, my race review for the Xfinity race. Done today. It's probably gonna be tonight because I probably don't have much time to prepare another stream for the Xfinity race, and by then the race at Chicago, the Cup race at the Chicago Street Course would have probably started. So I need to pay attention to that race because I want to stream my thoughts on that race as well. So Xfinity race for the Chicago Street Course, my race review for that race is probably gonna be up. Probably tonight if everything goes according to plan. So I'm just happy to have this race review from a week ago out of the way. I know I've been falling a little bit behind, but this time it was a pretty good excuse because I just after this races like this that end in 4 overtimes or more, 5 overtimes, they just mentally drain me, and it just gave me this feeling of, oh my gosh, thank God this race is over. I don't care who won, and I just wanted to get away from all things NASCAR for an entire week. So yeah, this is why you didn't get this review up until now, is because I just could not get around to stream it to talk about it because I still felt so mentally drained from watching that race. But here it is, and the Chicago Street Course race reviews, they're gonna come out later tonight. So that's all for my part, and let's just enjoy Chicago.